Hello and welcome to this tutorial. Today we are going to talk about headaches. Now, headache is a very common problem that you encounter in your OPDs. There are going to be a variety of reasons why patients can come to us in headache, and it's a very common presentation. I'm sure a lot of us have also suffered from headache at some point of our time or other, right? But when we speak medically, when we see a patient who has come to us with headache, we would want to classify that headache into two types. The first type of headache that we are going to consider today are the primary headaches. Now, these are patients usually who have headache for a long duration, and they have not just one simple cause of headache, they might have multiple reasons which are causing headache. And they are not really coming to us with just one episode of headache. They are going to be very often multiple episodes of headache for these patients. Today in this tutorial, we are going to focus primarily on this one, that is migraine. But other types of headache like tension headache, we are going to have a word on that. There is also something known as a stabbing type of idiopathic headache, or there could be exertional headache, and a rare but interesting headache known as cluster headache. So in this tutorial, we are really going to speak about migraine, tension type headache, and cluster headache. But before we go there, we should also know that there are other causes of headache. So secondary causes of headache are something that we should not forget. Very often, secondary cause of headache means that there is something else lying behind. And when we think of secondary headache, especially if it is a sudden onset headache with other neurological features like patient having fever, patient having vomiting, patient having diplopia, do not forget to rule out infections. Acute headache. Now remember, all these primary headaches are very often not acute presentations. They will have a long history. It's not the first time that the patient was having such kind of a headache when he came to you with primary headache. But systemic infections like meningitis, it could be a bacterial meningitis, or it could be a tuberculous meningitis, or viral meningoencephalitis. Remember to rule out infections if a patient has a sudden onset headache. Other causes could be self-evident, like someone having a head injury, someone having a vascular disorder like either aneurysm or sometimes hemorrhage, subarachnoid hemorrhage, and of course intracranial space-occupying lesions like having tumors. So we can see there are a variety of reasons why someone can have a headache. But as I've said, our primary focus is going to be today on primary headaches. And in these primary headaches, the most important one for us is, of course, migraine. Now, what is migraine? Who's going to come to us with migraine? What are the reasons for migraine and how do you treat them? Let's try to focus onto these conditions. Now, first of all, migraine is something which is common. It is not the commonest cause of primary headache. So if you think of all these causes, the commonest is actually tension type of headache. But migraine is so typical, and it is we do have therapies for it, that I'm going to focus more on migraine. But please remember, tension type headache is more common than migraine headache. But when you think of migraine, migraine is a disease which was predominantly seen in women. That does not mean it is only in females, but there is a 2 to 3 times higher chance that you are going to see this in females more than males. Also, migraine is something which can occur at any age, but really speaking, migraine in most cases would start early in their age groups. Migraine can also have a family history. So you might have a person who has other family members who had migraine, and this person is also suffering from migraine. Now, there are some very peculiar points which help us to think of migraine, and these are things that we should be asking in the history. One of them is triggers. Now, what do we mean by triggers? Triggers means that a patient of migraine will tell you that there are certain things which he or she has been able to identify, after which, if that particular thing occurs, after that the attack of migraine would start, right? So these are known as triggers. They're not only important to diagnose migraine, they would also help us to further kind of have non-pharmacologic advice for our patient to avoid these triggers, so that the attacks of migraine can be brought down. Some of them which I have highlighted in this table are really important. For example, exposure to bright lights. So people might come to you saying that when I drive, especially at nighttime driving, if there is bright glare on my eyes, I start having headache. Loud noise very common. So during festivals in our country especially, you'll have a lot of loud festivals. So patients might come to you saying that at that time, there is a big speaker going on outside my house, I'm going to have headache. Hunger and lack of sleep, very important in history taking. You might find that a lot of people who are working in professions which are, even our profession, like doctors, during residency or even during practice, people might not have time to eat. I agree, as students also that might be possible, but it's more likely to occur during residency, that people don't have time to eat. The timing of sleep has got really wrong all over the place. That is the time when attacks of migraine go up. Menses are another big area where women who have migraine would have symptoms, and this is not necessarily always with menses. Some might have few days before menses, some might have during menses, some might have at the time of ovulation. So it can be variable, but they might be able to have some correlation that they know that with menses or before menses I tend to have headache. Alcohol also can be a cause of headache in case patients who are having migraine, especially wine or beer. More so, wine can precipitate headache in these patients. Physical exertion, stress, lack of exercises. When I say physical exertion, that means out of proportion to what they're used to, but lack of exercise, having a bad weather, and many more factors. Really speaking, there is not just one trigger, there could be multiple triggers, and these triggers differ from patient to patient. So you have to be careful when you take history, that the patient must have been able to identify by now that which of this is his or her trigger. The ones which I have highlighted are very often the most common types of triggers. Now, what exactly leads to this trigger causing headache? That's not completely known. We don't completely understand the pathogenesis of patients having migraine, but we have some idea. Now, what we know is patients who have migraine are usually predisposed. They have some or the other risk factors which are causing them to kind of have a heightened sensitivity to pain. I repeat what I just now said. They have an increased sensitivity to pain. This increased sensitivity to pain is multifactorial. We have not been able to say exactly what is the cause, but there have been some risk factors which have been identified. Now, some risk factors, well, like patient having anxiety or depression, might have an increased, no, heightened sensitivity to pain. Remember, pain is a subjective thing. So people who are experiencing pain, the threshold to pain can vary. If the mind is stressed, if the patient is anxious or depressed, the threshold to tolerate pain comes down. So maybe that is how anxiety and depression relates with it. There is also a very interesting thing that people who are used to taking a lot of analgesics, they tend to have worse outcomes in migraine. Now this is a paradoxical statement I know I'm making over here, that people who have headaches will end up taking analgesics, but it has also been shown that people who take too much of analgesics and have migraine already, their outcomes in migraine are poor. Probably what is happening is that too much use of medicine is causing their threshold to pain to be even worse. Similarly, someone having frequent headaches tends to have worsen outcomes, and someone who has not been appropriately treated, of course, tends to have worse outcomes. In the last few years, there has been some change in our understanding of migraine. One of the idea that has come up new is that perhaps there is a top-down modulation. Top-down modulation means that different parts of the cortex and different parts of the limbic system are kind of interacting with a very important area known as the periaqueductal gray, which is supposed to control pain. Let me kind of give you an idea of this with a schematic diagram. So let's have a look over here. What I have over here is a diagram which shows you the frontal lobe. This is the temporal lobe. This is the brainstem with the midbrain, pons, and medulla. This is the part of cerebellum. This is the corpus callosum, and this is the midbrain. Above that is the thalamus. Below that is the hypothalamus. This over here is the pituitary. Now, one of the primary problem in these patients is that the cortex, especially the sensory cortex, which is somewhere over here, and the frontal lobe of the cortex, which has limbic system, is talking to a very important area in the midbrain known as periaqueductal gray. The periaqueductal gray is an area which is supposed to talk to areas down into the level of medulla, especially with the fifth nerve nucleus, which is something which tells us about the sensory supply of the head is with the fifth nerve. So the periaqueductal gray talks to the area in the medulla, in the both ventral as well as dorsal medulla, and it down regulates pain. This mechanism of down regulating pain by the periaqueductal gray is faulty in a patient of migraine. So I repeat that there is a top-down theory which says that the frontal lobe, especially the limbic system, the sensory cortex, which is supposed to talk to the periaqueductal gray and by that control the pain thresholds, that is faulty. So our pain threshold mechanism is faulty. There is another mechanism which has been postulated, and which we again have some drugs which say that perhaps that is a good mechanism to think of. That is the trigeminal ganglion. The trigeminal nerve has a big nucleus. This big structure that I have drawn from midbrain to pons to medulla, this is the trigeminal nucleus. And this trigeminal nucleus is feeding from the trigeminal ganglion. But this trigeminal ganglion is getting supply from variety of parts. That has the ophthalmic, maxillary, and mandibular division. But that division, which is getting, the feedback from meningeal blood vessels. I repeat, that a part of the trigeminal ganglion, which is getting feedback from the meningeal blood vessels, it is feeding into the trigeminal ganglion, and from here it is feeding into the periaqueductal gray and into the thalamus and into the hypothalamus. And it is believed that there is a hypersensitivity of these pathways. So I repeat, there is a decreased functioning of the top down pathways, and there is a hypersensitivity of the trigeminal pathways, which are feeding into the thalamus, and from thalamus also it is feeding into hypothalamus, and from thalamus it is feeding into the sensory cortex. So this patient is extra sensitive to the vasodilation and vasoconstriction that occurs into the meningeal blood vessels. It is also extra sensitive to any touch or any other stimuli which is occurring to the face. All of this hypersensitivity is feeding into some form. It is working with the triggers and starting pain sensation for these patients. So if I come back to this pathway, we can say that there is a top-down modulation which is faulty in these patients, that the limbic system, different parts of the limbic system, different parts of the cortex, they are not properly feeding into the periaqueductal gray, into the midbrain. And we can also say that there is a trigeminal nociceptive pathway where the trigeminal-vascular input, this is what is coming from the blood vessels, is feeding into the trigeminal nucleus, which is feeding into the thalamus and into the sensory cortex and causing pain. Right? So there are certain risk factors. There is a top-down modulation which has gone wrong, and there is a trigeminal pathway which has also gone wrong. Interestingly, we have been able to identify at least 3 types of what we can say peripheral sensitizers, or certain molecules which we have known to have a role in this pathogenesis. They are, please mark them as important, molecules like CGRP, neurotransmitter like CGRP, neurotransmitter like serotonin, and neurotransmitter like dopamine. Drugs acting on all of these. Now, we don't have commercially acting drugs on CGRP, but we have commercially acting drugs on commercially available drugs which act on serotonin receptors and dopamine receptors. And these drugs have been shown to bring down the attacks, bring down the severity of attacks in patients of migraine, right? So I repeat, overall, we can say that there are multiple players in migraine. We are not in a position to say which of them is the most important player. There are some risk factors. There is a top-down modulation which has gone wrong. There is peripheral sensitization because of certain molecules that we know. There is, of course, a role of the trigeminal path. When we try to, this all interacts with changes in the environment, and a patient who is more sensitive to pain ends up having attacks of migraine. Moving further, we can say that migraine can present to us now in 2 types. Initially, patients who come to us with migraine have only episodes of migraine. But over a period of time, the episodes start becoming more frequent, and that is when we call it chronic migraine. So let's have a look over there. Episodic migraine is when patients have repeated attacks of migraine. And each attack of migraine is going to last for 4 to 72 hours. Now, the specialty of this attack is during this attack, there is going to be no neurological abnormality. When you examine the patient, the reflexes are fine, all the sensory system examination fine, is you don't really find any abnormality in this patient, right? Now, there are some characteristics of this attack that occurs. Usually, this attack that will occur is going to be unilateral attack. Patients are going to tell you that one side of the head pains. This could be in the temporal area, parietal area, occipital area. Predominantly, it's the temporal and parietal area that pains, but it is unilateral. Remember that unilateral does not need to be same. On one time, it could be right side, and the next time it could be the left side which is paining. But at a time, unilateral pain is more common. That does not rule out that it could be a holocranial or bilateral pain, but it just says that unilateral is much more common. If you ask the patient to describe the kind of pain that the patient has, typically the patient would say that it is a throbbing kind of pain. Also, another specialty of the pain is that it is going to aggravate on movement. Patient will want to sit still. Pay attention to this, because this is something you're going to ask in history. What do you feel like when the pain is occurring? Patient will say, I just don't want to move. I don't want to go anywhere. I want to sit quietly at one place. I don't even want to move my head because it is so painful at that time. The moment I move my head or neck, the pain aggravates. They are hypersensitive to pain, remember, right? Now, another very classical feature of pain is there are going to be some extra findings in these patients. Typically, it is going to be one of these. Either the patient is going to have nausea and vomiting, very common. Patients might tell you at the time of pain they throw up, that they might have vomiting, they might have severe nausea going on during this whole time of 4 to 72 hours that they have pain. And very frequently they would have photophobia. Patients will tell you, I want to sit quietly in a dark and quiet room, right? So there can be phonophobia, they are averse to sounds, they're averse to lights, right? This kind of typical presentation helps us to differentiate migraine from other types of pain. We are going to come to other types of pain, but I should tell you here that migraine patient doesn't always mean that a patient of migraine has headache which is only migraine headache. A patient of migraine can also have other types of headache at other times, right? But it is these symptoms which help us to identify that this time the headache that my patient is having, is it because of migraine or is it not because of migraine? Especially having photophobia, nausea, phonophobia, these features are very classical of a pain coming because of migraine. But if the frequency goes up, more specifically, if a patient is having headache for more than 3 months with either of these characteristics. Now pay attention to this criteria. Chronic migraine means that my patient is having pain lasting for more than 3 months, and this pain has been there for more than 15 days in a month, right? So someone who is having a diagnosis of migraine, and now that migraine has been there for more than 3 months, and it is the headache is there for more than 15 days in a month, that is something which we call chronic migraine. Every year, so if a patient starts with episodic migraine, every year around 3% of these patients will turn into chronic migraine. So a lot of patients initially have episodic migraine and they don't really have headaches lasting for more than 3 months. They might have few days of headache and then gone, and then again in after few months they might have headache, but not really this frequent. But over a period of time, the headache starts becoming more permanent, so to say, and it doesn't just go away and they turn into chronic migraine. So around 3% every year will convert into chronic migraine. But important to pay attention over here is the definition is not talking about migraine headache; it is just saying headache. Now you do know that migraine headache means along with headache, patient will have photophobia, phonophobia, nausea, and all of that, right? So when we say that 15 days in a month patient should have headache, please add over here these 15 days could be migraine headache or it could be non-migraine headache also, right? So these 15 days include migraine headache plus non-migraine headache. So the criteria further specifies that out of these 15 days, if more than 8 days a month are typical migraine type of headache, then even if you have not reached 15 days, actually, you could still call it chronic migraine. So I repeat, either you need 15 days of headache, which is migraine plus non-migraine, or you need 8 days of headache per month, which is typically migraine headache. Now this history, though this is a classification for more of trials than real world, because in real world, if you ask a patient who has come to you with three months of history of headache, and you ask him how many of these 3 months or in the last 1 month, how many days did you have nausea and vomiting, he won't be really able to count these 8 days. So taking this history can be really tricky. One way to solve this problem is when patients come to you with headache, ask them to keep headache diaries, ask them to keep migraine diaries where they can note down what kind of symptoms they had, how much time did it last, what other features did they experience at that time, what was the severity on a score of let's say 1 to 10, was it not very bothersome or was it very bothersome, did it interfere with life, so on and so forth. So taking this history is very important to classify. But in routine practice, it is sufficient to say someone having more than half a month of headache for more than 3 months, every month having more than half a month having headache, we should consider them as qualifying for chronic migraine, right? Because this criteria is so difficult, there is another lighter criteria that you might use, that if someone has 5 or more headaches per month that interferes with their quality of life, right? So you might use this is a much more standard definition, but you might also want to use another definition, that if someone has 5 or more headaches per month that interfere with their quality of life, migraine is known to do that. Someone having photophobia will not be able to work. Imagine yourself in your classroom, if you have photophobia, very difficult to work over there, right? So if it is interfering with quality of life, that can also qualify as migraine headache, right? So we have two sets of definition. One is episodic headache that describes this episode, and such episodes occurring multiple times is chronic headache. These patients might require prophylactic therapy, right? So please make a note of this. Someone having chronic migraine, if I have just episodes, I might want to treat the episodes only. But if I have chronic migraine, I might want to treat the chronic migraine so that more episodes do not come. Okay, fair enough. Now, finally, let's move on to how do we manage patients having migraine. The most important thing in management of migraine is to know that we don't have complete cures yet. We have to identify what are the triggers in these patients. So one of the most important advice you can give to your patient is identify the triggers. Non-pharmacologic therapy is all about identifying the triggers and asking the patient to avoid the triggers. This could mean simple things like pay attention to your sleep, do not go hungry, you need to have your food at time. This might be simple things like take care during menses, be well hydrated during menses, take adequate rest during menses. If you anticipate pain, start therapy early. You might have to consider all those non-pharmacologic advices. Also, exercises, yoga, meditation, these have shown to have some role in decreasing the intensity of headache. The frequency of headache can also come down. Acupuncture also has been shown to have some role, but again, these are not always going to work in all patients. But in some of the patients, yoga can help. In some of them, meditation can help. In some of them, acupuncture can help. Bringing down stress, taking care of their triggers are non-pharmacologic advices. We need to customize these non-pharmacologic advices for every patient because every patient is different. You have to understand what is bothering that patient and help that patient in overcoming those difficulties. But then we need to definitely consider pharmacologic therapy in a lot of patients who have come to us. Now, this pharmacologic therapy can be divided into two parts. All patients are going to require something for the headache, and that is going to be the acute management. When I say all patient, I mean a patient who has whether episodic migraine or whether the patient has chronic migraine, acute therapy is definitely going to be required. In acute therapy, the most important are, of course, NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and the topmost that is used is naproxen. You will find a lot of doctors prescribing naproxen for these patients. Ibuprofen can be used, paracetamol, and you will find a lot of commercially available combinations of paracetamol with caffeine. Caffeine also has been shown to bring down the headache in patients of migraine. Exact mechanisms are not really known, but we find a lot of preparations where caffeine is added to paracetamol when they are especially kind of made for patients of migraine, right? Now, apart from NSAIDs, now NSAIDs are good, but NSAIDs repeated use can have gastritis. Someone has a renal problem, you might not be able to use it. And truly speaking, NSAIDs alone might not be sufficient to bring down pain. So there are other category of drugs that we have to target, and one of the most important category is serotonin receptor agonist. There are a variety of serotonin receptors in the brain, but the most important serotonin receptors are 5-HT1B, 5-HT1D. There can be also 5-HT1F selective ones, but 5-HT1B and 5-HT1D. Please mark these names as important. Serotonin receptor agonists are important to bring down pain. They decrease the peripheral sensitivity to pain and bring down the level of pain. Now, there are some things we need to remember about these drugs. One is we can classify them as non-selective versus selective serotonin receptor agonists. So please make a note of this. You can have non-selective versus you can have selective serotonin receptor agonists. The non-selective ones were the older ones, of which the most frequently used today, still today, is ergotamine. Ergotamine is still available. You will find a lot of medicines available on in the pharmacy. You will see a lot of medicines which have a combination of ergotamine with caffeine and paracetamol. This is a very frequently used combination available in most cases, right? So ergotamine, and you'll find a lot of patients who also know, that they know the brand names, that okay, I'm taking a particular drug. If you read the content, they are taking ergotamine with paracetamol and caffeine, and there is one more drug will come to that, right? But much more safer compared to ergotamine are the selective ones, of which sumatriptan and rizatriptan are important drugs. Both of them are available as tablet, and rizatriptan nowadays is also available as a mouth dissolving strip. So it's available like a paper like strip, and the patient is asked to keep it on the tongue and it dissolves. That brings down the adverse effect, and the adverse effect is sometimes they can cause nausea. So if you allow it to have it as a kind of a sublingual absorption, you just keep it on the tongue and it dissolves. It's a mouth dissolving sublingual absorption. Then patients can have much faster relief, right? Now, what we need to know about these drugs is, please remember, they are not for prophylaxis. So they have to be started as soon as the headache starts. And the best results come when they are started within the first 30 to 60 minutes, that is within the first hour of onset of headache. If someone delays these drugs, if the headache has started like 6 months, 6 years, 6 hours back, and now you're going to take the drug, the results are not really going to be optimal. So these drugs have to be taken as early as possible after the headache starts. They are a good category of drugs. Overall adverse effects are not much, and definitely rizatriptan and sumatriptan are ones which are very frequently being used nowadays. But I said dopamine is also one more neurotransmitter which is responsible, and we can have drugs which act as dopamine antagonists. And remember, I told you there are commercially available formulations. The commercially available formulations usually have ergotamine, paracetamol with caffeine, and prochlorperazine. This combination is one of the most frequently available drugs in India. You'll find it's a combination tablet which has all three of them, and they are very frequently given to bring down the intensity of. Advantage of dopamine antagonists is also that they bring down the feeling of nausea, and if the patient is vomiting, even that settles down. They also have some amount of sedative action in some patients, so that also quiets down the patient and the symptoms really come down. If patient has persistent nausea and vomiting, metoclopramide. If the patient has consistent nausea and vomiting, metoclopramide can also be separately advised for these patients, right? Now, remember, all of these are only acute therapies. They abort the attack once the attack has started, right? But they are not going to prevent the next attack from coming. You can't keep on giving them forever. The acute therapy is SOS. SOS meaning whenever the pain starts. Whether the patient has episodic migraine or the patient has chronic migraine, SOS, when the attack starts, this is what you give to the patient. But if the patient is a patient of chronic migraine, which means there are more than 15 days in a month that the patient has headache, or more than 8 days in a month, sorry, where the patient has typical migraine headache, or if the patient has more than 5 days of headache per month, which are interfering with his quality or her quality of life, then you should consider the patient for preventive therapy, right? So all patients of chronic migraine, please mark this as important, should be considered for preventive therapy. And the most frequently used preventive therapy are beta blockers. Truly speaking, the mechanism of actions are really uncertain. But propranolol usually started at a dose of 40 milligram per day, and you can increase the dose. You just have to monitor the blood pressure, and if the patient has any cardiac other risk factors, look at the PR interval. But otherwise, a safe drug, 40 milligram per day of propranolol, is very frequently used in these patients. Other drugs that can be used are anti-epileptics, and amongst anti-epileptics, more than valproate, topiramate is something which is being very frequently used nowadays. Tricyclic antidepressants also have a role, not because they are antidepressants, but because they change the threshold for pain, they change the sensitivity for pain. They are not given necessarily for depression. So it should not be said that antidepressants are given only if the patient has depression. They are drug of choice for the pain relief. So amitriptyline and venlafaxine, also antidepressant, can be used for these patients. ACE inhibitors and clonidine also have a role, but more, I would say, theoretical than practical. We don't really use these drugs in routine practice for migraine. They might have an additional benefit if the patient was already on ACE inhibitors for something else. But propranolol, followed by topiramate, followed by amitriptyline, these are the choices for a lot of patients. Let's compare this headache now with other types of headache. And the next type of headache I would like to talk about is what is known as tension type headache. Right now, tension type headache, naam sun ke lagta hai ki the patient has some kind of a tension. That is actually what people believed was tension type of headache. But honestly speaking, we do not now understand what's the mechanism of tension type of headache. Why should someone have tension type of headache? Not really clear. But what do we know about this kind of headache? So let's write down few things that we know about tension type of headache. Now, first thing is tension type of headache is slightly more male predominant than female predominant. Again, this is a kind of headache which is going to occur typically in middle ages. And tension type of headache, unlike a patient of migraine. So if I draw a patient of migraine, let's say this is the head that I'm drawing. A patient of migraine, we know, was going to come with unilateral headache, right? But a patient who has tension type of headache is very often going to come with headache which is bilateral and a band like sensation. The patient will tell you it feels like a band on my frontal side and on my temporal side. I feel like someone has tied a band around my head and it is paining, right? So patient will have what we say as a bilateral band like sensation. bilateral band-like sensation around across the head, and that is the kind of headache. This headache is going to be a persistent kind of headache. It is a long-lasting headache. It doesn't go away very fast. It might last for up to days. So it starts and then the patient keeps on having pain for up to days. Now, very frequently you might confuse this with migraine. And please make a note of this. Patient who have tension type of headache can have coexisting migraine headache. So they can coexist. But the real way to differentiate them is tension type of headache does not have nausea. You guessed it right, does not have photophobia and does not have phonophobia. So photophobia, phonophobia, the patient will not say that at the time when I have headache, I feel like sitting quietly. I feel like I'm going to throw up, or I feel that I'm going to, I can't tolerate sounds at that time. All those symptoms will not come to this patient. The patient will keep on having headache continuously, but very often the patient will be functional. The patient will be able to go out and do the work, right? Unlike migraine, which will really interfere so terrifically with the quality of life, the patient is not able to go out and work. These patients will be able to go out and work. They are going to be bothered by headache, but it's not that it's going to stop them from work, right? So the intensity of the pain is very often moderate level, not as severe as migraine, right? Differentiating the two can be really difficult. It's a clinical diagnosis. Treatment wise, these patients require NSAIDs for acute therapy. Triptans do not work. So triptans do not really work in these patients. Some patients initially might show you some response, but maybe that's a placebo response, because over a period of time, the response goes away. Sometimes, we do that in clinical practice. We give them triptans and see whether, if you're really confused whether you're looking at migraine or TTH, you might actually do that. Though, it's a controversial thing to do. It's not always right. We should try to make the diagnosis clinically. But sometimes when you're really confused, which is the predominant headache, if triptans don't work, you know that you're looking at tension type of headache. But if the headache frequency is high, then you need to give something to bring down that frequency. And there the drug of choice are tricyclic antidepressants. So tricyclic antidepressants like amitriptyline is one of the finest drugs that brings down the headache in case of tension type of headache. So it's NSAIDs followed by tricyclic antidepressants, right? So that is about tension type of headache, band-like sensation, and it's going to have a treatment with NSAIDs and tricyclic antidepressants. The last type of headache that I want to talk about is what is known as cluster headache, right? Cluster headache. Please make a note of this. The last type of headache I'm talking about is what is known as cluster headache. Again, this is a primary type of headache, but it is a very rare kind of headache. Cluster headache is a very rare kind of headache. It is not something that you are going to see commonly. The reason I'm describing this is it is very peculiar. The features of cluster type of headache are very interesting. First, of course, it is a male predominant headache. So male is to female ratio is almost 3:1. So it is a predominantly male kind presentation. Again, this is going to be a headache that you see in middle ages. It's not usually going to be a young person who comes to you with headache. This headache is going to be episodic and explosive. The patient will tell you, I have never experienced this kind of a pain, right? And unfortunately, this kind of a headache has a pattern. It comes as an attack, which is going to last for few minutes to hour, very often few minutes. It is going to last for few minutes, and there is going to be an attack where the patient is going to have headache, right? Let us say that today morning the patient had the first attack at morning 8 o'clock. Actually, that's the wrong example. I should say very often the attacks are nocturnal. So half of the patients at least, the attacks will start at night. But for our example, let's say today morning the patient had an attack at 8 o'clock. It lasted till 8:15, 8:30, and then it was gone, right? The attack will repeat at almost the same time on the next day. So it is going to be a daily attack. Please mark this as important. That's the periodicity which is so classical of these cluster headache. So the patient is going to have episodes. At the time when he has an episode, it's an attack which is explosive, severe, excruciating kind of pain is what the patient will describe. And when this occurs, it is going to repeat. So there is going to be a periodicity of the pain. When we say periodicity of the pain, it is almost exactly on the same time. That's something which is very difficult to explain. Why does it occur exactly at the same time on the next day? But it's going to occur exactly at the same time. And such attacks, such daily attacks, are going to continue for close to 8 to 10 weeks. So for 8 to 10 weeks, the patient is going to be completely disabled because the headache is going to come almost like, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Every day, 8 o'clock, the patient is going to have pain for like 8 to 10 weeks. And then after that, nothing. It just disappears. And it might disappear for close to roughly 1 year. And then next year, roughly around the same time, patient will start again having a headache, again attack, 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 everyday attack, and then it just goes away. So now you know why we call it cluster headache. So every day the pain comes back, it comes back at the same time, it lasts for 8 to 10 weeks, and after 8 to 10 weeks, it disappears as if nothing really happened. Right? So the patient's going to be afraid at that time, and it does come back every day. Right? It's really difficult to explain why such a phenomena is occurring. Such attacks might last for a short while, like almost a month, or it might last longer for, as we have said, 8 to 10 weeks. Right? So there is periodicity, there is severe headache, and it's kind of an explosive type of headache. What is also interesting is about this headache at the time when the headache occurs. Remember the patient of migraine? The patient of TTH could move around, do his work, is not really disabled by it, doesn't have nausea, vomiting, nothing like that. Patient of migraine is wanting to stay quiet. He or she is not going to move the head, is going to just stay quiet at one place and not want to move. But cluster headache is going to be a restless patient. The pain is so severe, the patient is moving around and walking around the room, trying to kind of hold his head, doing everything possible to get that pain down. And for those few minutes, the pain is really bad. It's a restless patient. It's not a patient sitting at one place like migraine. This is a patient walking around because of continuous pain. Also, at the time when it is headache, it is a unilateral headache. Very characteristic of cluster headache is unilateral headache and always the same side. So migraine was once on this side, it could also be on the other side, but this headache is a cluster headache, is always going to be on one side, severe excruciating headache. And in addition to pain on the same side, on the ipsilateral side, patient is also going to have some other features, like there is going to be redness of the eye, or there is going to be tears in the eye. So there is going to be conjunctival injection. Injection means redness of the eye, or there is going to be lacrimation. Patient is also going to have nasal congestion. The patient will tell you that at the time when there was this headache, at that time I started having nasal congestion. The nose on that side starts getting full, and the patient will have difficulty in breathing on that particular side. Not only that, the patient can also have ptosis on that particular side. All of these features are happening because there is an overactivity of the parasympathetic system. So very interesting feature is when this headache occurs, there is an overactivity of the parasympathetic system, and because of this, all of these extra features will come. Exact mechanism of this kind of a clustered headache is not known. We diagnose it based on the clinical features, and we manage it based on our experience as we have it. So how do we manage this? Well, management of acute attack is, again, patients might have some response to NSAIDs, but the response to NSAIDs is really low. Compared to the other types of headache, these patients don't really respond very well to NSAIDs. They do respond to giving oxygen supplementation. For the time when the patient is having headache, if you give oxygen to the patients do much better. Also, they do respond, compared to the tension type of headache, they do respond to triptans. So giving oxygen therapy with NSAIDs, with triptans is really one of the very important therapies. But if the patient is going to have pain for so long, every day giving triptans is not going to make sense. So we have to give them some prophylaxis therapy. That prophylaxis therapy could be a variety of types. Different drugs have been tried and they do work. We don't really understand how, but we know that steroids work. In some patients, steroids might be able to get down the attack. Other drugs that might really work are lithium. Lithium, which is also used in other neuropsychiatric conditions, might help to bring down the attacks. Ergotamine, which we saw, which is technically a part of serotonin agonist, but that might be able to work in some attacks to bring down some cases to bring down the attacks. Verapamil, especially if someone has a longer lasting attack, Verapamil is considered as a very important drug. So please mark this drug as important. Verapamil, for anybody who has a longer bout, if it is crossing 1 month and it's not getting controlled by these, Verapamil might be a good drug to try. And nowadays there are experimental therapies in form of stimulating certain parts of brain by putting electrodes in the brain, what is known as deep brain stimulation. I repeat, deep brain stimulation, which is a type of neurostimulation where we stimulate certain parts of the brain which shine up during maybe functional MRI or otherwise, and we try to change the modulation, try to modulate the pain centers in the brain. Right. This is more of an experimental one. Verapamil is most frequently what is used. Steroids and lithium can also be used. Right. So to summarize, we have seen different types of headaches. We have seen migraine headache. We have seen the patient having cluster headache. We have seen the patient having tension type of headache. Right. So if you have any questions regarding headache, feel free to discuss with me. I would love to take your questions and answers. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Goodbye and Jai Hind.